When people start learning a language, the thing they most often get wrong is that they don't know where they are going. They don't know what the end goal is, and because of that, they feel like they need to just start learning a bunch of things. Probably not even the right things. If you're new here, my name is Nick. I speak 4 languages and I'm currently working on my 5th. For most people, I don't think learning a bunch of random things is necessary. I think the first step should be to figure out what hobby you want to incorporate down the line, and then go as quickly as you can from knowing nothing or almost nothing to being able to use that hobby for language learning. This also doesn't have to take a lot of time. A lot of people complain that they don't have enough time to learn a language, and that then becomes a reason why they quit, or a reason why they simply don't start. They also believe that they have to do a lot every single day. And that's not necessary either. One of the most important things to figure out early is whether the language you're learning uses the same alphabet that you're used to or not. If it doesn't, you're going to have to spend some time learning that, and that changes everything. It also makes learning new words afterwards a bit more tricky because they look a bit more abstract to you. I really enjoy reading, so for me, getting to the point where I can start reading as quickly as possible is always a priority. But I'd say that it's this way for everyone. Alphabet choice, it changes everything. If I'm learning Korean and I want to read or follow subtitles, then I have to learn the Korean alphabet first. There are people who argue against this, but I would definitely say this is one of the first things you should be looking at. Learning the alphabet is more important to focus on, even before vocabulary. You can learn a few words to get some pronunciation down, but definitely don't focus on grammar, and don't focus too much on vocabulary. Now, grammar is actually one of the last things you should be doing. If you happen to be learning a language that has a different alphabet, then that is probably one of the only reasons why I would suggest starting with Duolingo. Duolingo actually has a decent way of teaching alphabets like Cyrillic, Japanese, or Korean. Aside from that, I probably wouldn't use Duolingo anymore. If you keep using Duolingo, then the main thing that you're probably getting out of it is that you burn out. Another fast way to burn out is that you mismatch your abilities with the material that you're using. It's either that you're doing things that are too easy because you already know some of it, or you're doing things that are too hard too early. Especially when you're just starting, I don't think watching series is the right move, because it's going to be too difficult. You need a base first. The base I like to aim for is a vocabulary of about 200 words, plus another 50 words that are specific to whatever task or interest that you have. That's the point where I would start consuming content. That could be reading or watching things, and you'd probably want even more words if the content is super complex. I wouldn't start with something like Suits. A better alternative would be something that is a bit simpler, but you still want to have it enjoyable. If you're using material that's not the right level, you're going to get bored. But you should also avoid material that's technically the right level, but that doesn't engage you. This comes after you've already learned the first 200 words, but if you start watching a kids show you don't actually want to watch just because it's easy enough, you're probably going to quit. You have to find content that suits your level and that you actually enjoy. I've mentioned that I recommend learning about 200 words for a reason. I don't believe you need to learn everything before you start consuming content. If you learn everything first and then start watching series, you're not really learning anything from the series, and you also spend a lot more time in that place where you're just learning vocabulary, which a lot of people find boring. Both of those things can kill motivation because you don't feel like you're progressing, and you also don't feel like you're doing things that are engaging enough. For me, something like manga is perfect because I enjoy it, and at around 200 words, you start getting the gist of what's going on. You understand about 80 to 90% of it, and 90% is the perfect place to be. That's where you learn new things without realizing it. You're not really studying anymore, you're just consuming content. Once you hit around 200 words, that's when I would start reading simple books, manga, or even watching series. It might still be rough, but that's the point where I'd start. I would not start watching series or reading books before that. If you start language learning with grammar, you're even more likely to stop. I mentioned earlier that I wouldn't do grammar particularly early, because grammar is too abstract and you don't need it to reach the enjoyable parts of language learning. A lot of simple grammar rules you'll actually learn naturally if you do what I mentioned earlier. That is to build a base of around 200 to 250 words and then start consuming content. You'll naturally pick up what sounds right, and once you reach a very advanced level, that's when it makes sense to go back and look at grammar rules to fine-tune things. I'd say most people can sound fluent without having to study grammar at all. If you want language learning to become a habit, you need some form of accountability. It can be complex, or it can be simple. You might want to consider my free Skool community, where you can post updates and see other people checking in as well. The idea is that you have something that works even when you don't feel motivated. You can't always rely on friends to be interested in language learning just because you are. And so online communities, they work. Streak counters, they can work too, but you have to be careful. If a streak breaks and that makes you quit entirely, that's a problem. One missed day shouldn't turn into stopping completely. At this point, you're probably wondering what the first 30 to 60 days should actually look like. I believe that after about 60 days, you should have a base of around 200 words. That's learning just over 3 words per day. You can do that with Anki, or eventually with the app that I'm building, or even with Duolingo. But the words that you learn on Duolingo probably won't be the words that you actually need to start consuming content. If you're learning a language with a different alphabet, take it slower. That's why 60 days work well. I would still suggest no more than 5 words per day, especially in the beginning, regardless of how motivated you are. I believe that another reason people quit early is that they start too heavy. This is the same thing that you see with people who start going to the gym in January. They make it a huge thing, and then they stop. When you're starting, it should be easy. It should be enjoyable. 5 words per day is more than enough to reach the 200 words within 60 days. If you feel super motivated one day, then you could keep going, but I would suggest not. Quitting early can actually be a good thing, because if you quit at a point where you were super motivated to continue, then that leads to you wanting to return to it even more the next day. Whatever tool you use, it needs to have some sort of repetition. You're not going to remember a word just because you saw it once or twice. Anki does this really well, and that's something I'm also aiming to do with my own app. The important thing is that the system works for you and actually brings words back. Otherwise, you're seeing new words, but you're not learning them. If you stick to this approach, you can reach that 200 word base within 2 months. If you're feeling a bit less consistent, then maybe 3 months. If you're feeling more consistent and you actually know that you can do more, just be careful about this, then you can reach it within 30 days. And that's the point where content becomes accessible. And that's when language learning actually becomes fun. If you start failing, then lower the bar instead of giving up. Change the system if you have to, and just lower your expectations. The goal is to reach content as quickly as possible, because that's when language learning stops feeling like studying. If you want more tips on what to do once you reach that point, you can watch this video next about what types of books to read once you have a decent base.